Thank you guys. Thank you.
You gonna leave that up there?
Yeah. Well,
Sounds like yours.
thank you all. I'm actually going to be starting a little bit of a series today. It's going to be a 5-week series that I'm going to be going through. And so, it's pretty cool. Last week, I got to preach my first sermon in this kind of setting. And now this week, and over the next couple weeks, I'll be able to preach my first sermon series in this kind of setting. So I'm really excited about that. And the series itself is going to be focusing a lot on our heart, right? The condition of our heart, and the way that we look at and think about our heart in relationship to, and it's going to be more metaphoric, more from a, spiritual perspective, but I'm going to do my best to make it like real, because the condition of our heart and the way that we live our life on a daily basis is affected by our heart. And so I think it's a very important topic to address for us as believers moving forward. A lot of what we do stems from the heart. And so I think you guys are going to understand a little bit more by the end of this where I'm coming from. So what do you see when you see this, right? So we see a heart. I see 808 and Heartbreaks by Kanye West. Primarily, but the heart symbol, love, passion, emotion, relationships, Valentine's Day, got that one coming up. Hashtag still single, still going, but yeah, but the important thing to note is that the heart itself doesn't carry any innate value. Everything that the heart is associated with, right? Like the heart itself doesn't carry love. And the heart itself doesn't carry romance. And the heart itself doesn't carry a Nicholas Sparks novel, right? The heart is what we make of it, right? It's simply a symbol that we use to portray something. It's kind of like an autograph, right? An autograph is just a name. But to a certain person, that name has certain weight, right? Like you guys would not care at all if you got a signature by Paul Macbeth. I would flip a crap if I got a signature by Paul Macbeth because he's the 4-time world champion in disc golf, right? I would go crazy if I got Paul Macbeth's signature. But you guys are sitting there going, I have no clue. And there's something in your life as well that I wouldn't care about if I got their signature, because ultimately, all it is just a name. It's just a picture. It doesn't have any value by itself. It only has the value that we give it. And so there's a couple different definitions of the heart, right? This is the one primarily that we're going to be focusing on. And it's interesting because when it says that the heart is the innermost feelings or character, I got this from Google. Right? This isn't like I didn't go on to some like theological or spiritual website to get this definition. Like that's off of Google. And now I called it a definition of content because I'm not good with words. I don't know what kind of definition that would be specifically, but that's describing like the content of a person or an organization or like the innermost character of something. Right? So just some of the other definitions. It's a noun. And the heart is a hollow organ. That's important, and we're going to get to that. But it's a hollow organ, which acts as a force pump to push blood through the body. Right? Very blunt. It could be a location, like putting your hand on your heart, or like the heart of the city. It could be representing of a place on ourselves, or a place, heart of campus, or something like that. It could be an adjective, describing personality, describing somebody's disposition. The heart is often associated with compassion, with courage, right? And then it could also be associated with prepositions to give it a little bit different of a meaning, right? Like at heart, like in essence, or in whole, or in itself, like at heart. Or it could be by heart, by memory. Or it could be to heart, meaning with deep concern or with deep focus, right? Taking something to heart. And then the last one, the one that I really want us focusing on, is the innermost feelings or character. And to give you a little bit more of an art history lesson, the heart symbol itself actually has a very interesting background. The heart symbol was first created and originated by people during a pre-Enlightenment period where they were kind of just guessing what the heart looked like. So pretty much the process that these scientists went through is they would line up a whole lot of animal hearts, and then they would have a lineup of men where the scientists would like look at the hearts that he has in front of him from all these different kinds of animals, and then he would like put his hand on the man's chest and kind of feel around and try and guess, where are the curves, where's the contractions happening. But at the time, the Catholic Church wouldn't allow autopsies to be performed because of spiritual reasons. They didn't want, when the resurrection of the dead to happen, that they didn't want all these cut up bodies going into the kingdom. And so there was like this theological hold that was put on, being able to see what the heart actually looked like. And so our modern heart symbol that we now have, which it really didn't start carrying any of the values of like love and romance and all that stuff until it got to the Americas. But that symbol itself started to be circulated before like Enlightenment even happened. And so when the Enlightenment period happened, autopsies were allowed to be performed, and then you had anatomical drawings, and now you have this heart symbol that had been around for a while, and that was gaining traction and gaining popularity. And so now the anatomical drawings of the heart aren't what people associate with the heart. Like, they know that that's really how it is, because even us, we use we have our little heart emojis, and we love the posts in the shape of that, but it's interesting because the heart symbol itself comes out of a state of ignorance, right? And it's not ignorance because they didn't want to know what it looked like, It's not like they didn't put in the effort. It was because they just didn't know. The Catholic Church would not allow them to perform the autopsy, so they were kind of just guessing, right? It was formed out of a state of ignorance, and it was really a statement of ignorance on limitation. And excuse me for overstepping my boundaries, but I think Christianity is the same way. We go into Christianity expecting this kind of faith, this cute, cuddly, easy faith. Then once we get into it, we get that.
Come on.
And we realize that, oh wait, there's a little bit more to this than what we thought. And it's not because, we weren't ignorant to this because we didn't want to be. We weren't ignorant to this because we didn't want to be informed because we didn't want to know. No, we were ignorant because we weren't in it. We weren't allowed to see the content of what life really, really meant. And so we're living in this state now where, oh crap, oh man, you're telling me that I've got to go and pray for people who I don't like, and I've got to forgive people who have wronged me, and I've got to... Really? Really? I got to start learning how all the different chambers of my heart works, and so now I'm protecting myself at this level when the enemy's attacking me at this level, and I don't even know what to do.
Come on.
I don't know how to handle the situation because it's a lot more difficult than I thought it was. Right? And then we get down to it, and now we're stuck in it, and now there's no way out. And so now we have to deal with trying to figure this out, and we barely scratch the surface. And I'm not the first person to preach on the heart. I think every pastor at some point has got to preach something on the heart. It's something that we all share, something that we all have in common. And so I just wanted to share with you guys a couple of statements, from pastors who I kind of drew my inspiration from for this sermon series. And so the first one was from Andy Stanley. He preached a sermon called The Heart of the Problem. And he said, whatever you don't deal with on the inside eventually shows itself on the outside, right? The effects of the heart that it has on the rest of your body. The things that are on the inside will eventually start to come out if you don't do anything about it, right? And so he's talking about the heart of the problem is that we don't know how to deal with everything on the inside all the times. And so now we're stuck in a position where we're like, oh, crap. Like, this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was, right? And then Pastor Stephen, of course, I gotta mention Pastor Stephen. He preached, now this is at least top five of my favorite sermons. But he preached 3 Habits of a Healthy Heart, where he said the natural inclination of our heart is a decline. Right? And what he meant by that was we have to continue to reposition, to refocus, to redirect our heart towards God, right? Because our heart is naturally at a decline. It's looking at our feet. It's looking at our path. It's looking where we're going. It's worried about what's in front of us. And what he was saying is like, no, you have to reposition your heart towards God's eyes, right? You have to reposition, but it's something that you have to continue to do because the natural tendency is for you to go right back down and looking at what's in front of you instead of what's beyond, right? And then the last one, and I think it's my favorite statement out of all these, it's by John Gray, and he said that we develop what's known as Savior syndrome, right? And he defines that as trying to put people in a place that only God can fill. Wow. That's what he describes as Savior syndrome, right? Putting people in a place that only God can fill. And that's really the problem with our heart, right? Is we go into life trying to put people where God belongs. And so it's kind of like a combination of those 3 things and then a little bit of my own perspectives that I really want to be touching on during the series. But it's going to be called Wholehearted. And now you can notice there's a little bit something different about the spelling of wholehearted, right? And that's on purpose. I did a little word play. Okay, this is my rap side coming out. And because if you were to close your eyes and I would say wholehearted, most of you guys would not spell it like that. Because that's the phrase, wholehearted, wholeheartedly, like completely, that's what we would assume. And that's what most of us assume about ourselves too, but most of the time we actually have holes in our heart when we believe that it's whole, right? But kind of the goal of this sermon series, after these 5 weeks, is I want us to put a big old dub on our heart. I want us to put a big old dub so that we realize how to make our heart truly whole. And yes, when I got the idea for that, I jumped in my seat. The first couple times, I don't even know what I did. The first couple times that I practiced it, I was super happy. But here's the theme statement. All of us are born with God-sized holes in our heart that can be filled with anything we let it to make it seem whole. We will learn through these next 5 weeks how to let God fill the holes in our heart to make it truly whole. Right? So that's kind of what I'm addressing. And so the theme verse, what we're really going to be looking at is Proverbs 27:19, which says, "As water reflects the face, so a man's heart reflects the man." Now this is 2 verses after my favorite verse of all time, and I didn't even realize it was there. I didn't realize that this was there until I started doing studies for this, right? And so this was a hidden gem that I had never run into before, but it's great. And so this week, I want to be preaching on heartbeat, right? The rhythms and the patterns, point 1. But the heartbeat, this is kind of getting our rhythm into the sermon series, right? So the first thing I want to preach on is pattern. And life works in patterns. Every single day before I go to class, I hit the snooze button twice. I watch YouTube until I cannot, because then I would be late for class. And then I wake up and throw on clothes, and I throw everything in my backpack, and then I double check everything, and then I run and do a little for brushing my teeth, and then swipe on that deodorant real quick, toss it all over, and then run to class. That's a pattern, right? And all of us have our patterns that we go. Hopefully you guys are a little bit better than me in the mornings, and you guys are, I wake up and I read the Bible, and I pray every single morning, and I get out of bed and I take 2 hours to make myself look beautiful. No, that's not me. But we all have patterns. And life in general works in patterns, and we work in patterns. This world works in patterns. When you're studying, actually, it's been proven that if you study your hardest subject right before you go to bed, and then you study and then sleep, right? What that's going to do is it's going to cement the neural pathways, the patterns of retrieving and remembering the information, so that when you study the stuff right before you go to bed, and then you go to bed, and then you wake up and you review the same information again, if you do that with the stuff that's really, if you want to memorize something, or if you're really struggling in a class and just, it's a whole lot of definitions, and it's a difficult thing to remember, right? Because our mind works in patterns. And, you can even take Stephon Curry. He doesn't think about shooting the three-point shot when he's in a game. He might work on his form and his technique and all that during the off season, but he's not worried about how to shoot the ball while he's shooting the ball, because for him it's just a muscle memory. He's done it so many times that he's built up a pattern of how to shoot the ball at the right time, at the right place, and if I take one step back, okay, how much more power, how much more arc, how much more direction do I need to put on the ball? This isn't stuff that goes through his mind because he's done it so many times. It's a pattern. And so really, what we need to do is we need to start evaluating our patterns. Because we all, right now, are reinforcing a pattern, whether or not we know it. And now this is a good pattern to be establishing, just being here and spending time in worship and spending time with other people, also pursuing God. And this is a good pattern. But we also do things that don't reinforce good patterns. But every single thing that we do establishes and reinforces and creates sometimes a pattern. And so, it could be a lot of pressure. It could be a little bit, worrisome. But that's not the goal. And I don't think that that's what God wants us to be looking at every single time that we do something. I don't think that He intends us to be worried about our technique, about our shooting form, every single time that we do something in our life, because eventually we want to get to the point where it just becomes a pattern. It becomes a habit. We don't have to think about it. And everything in this world works in patterns. Think about the climate, right? Florida's always hot. It's a pattern. Seattle's always raining. That's a pattern. North Carolina fluctuates in all kinds of different weather temperatures and situations. It's a pattern. Because there's different areas throughout the world that just experience a certain kind of climate most often. It doesn't mean that Florida isn't going to have a couple cold days every once in a while, but there's a pattern that is established, right? You don't have to buy a giant fur coat to live in North Carolina because the pattern is consistent enough that you know that it's not going to get that cold. You don't need to buy a tank top in Toronto because you know that you're never going to get hot enough to wear a tank top. It's a pattern, right?
Well, now the global warming's a thing.
Well, yeah, and that's even a better point because and I preached on this one time, but the concept of momentum, right? And once again, I got a little bit creative with it because the word moment is within the word momentum. And so what God was really showing me through the study that I did was that momentum is established in moments of decision, in moments of reaction, in moments of standing firm, right? Our momentum in our faith, in our life, in general, is established in moments. And so, you look at Newton's law, when it says an object in motion stays in motion until an external force is applied on it. And so that can work with our climate, right? Until an external force, something outside of it, is applied to it. And so if we're dealing with these patterns that we want to change, and you're at a point where you're like, okay, I don't know what to do, I'm dealing with this sin pattern, I'm dealing with this this issue that just continues to get in my way. Well, what do you do? It's all decisions. Because those moments when we decide differently, that's how we change our actions, right? Decisions will affect patterns. And they can affect them negatively, they can affect them positively, but decisions affect patterns, right? God has really been teaching me a lot about the power of decision. That there's a lot of weight, and I know, there are certain issues and, sicknesses and mental health issues where you can decide all you want, but nothing's going to change. I understand that. But 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, like, a lot of problems can be fixed by deciding to do something differently. And so when we decide something differently, it creates a new pattern and leads us to a new position. And position is the next thing I want to talk about. And we can even see in the verse that was put up, the position, right, of the water reflecting the face. The water doesn't change the appearance or the position of the face. Whatever the face looks like, when you look into water, it shows you what's there. And so when this verse says, so a man's heart reflects the man, the heart never shows anything that the man doesn't have. Right? It doesn't go and create all these different things and present a false image and whatnot. The heart can't do that. But we can. The heart can't affect the man, but the man can affect the heart. I mean, like, kinda. Like, we can't really, really affect the heart. Like, we can't put on a pretend confidence and a pretend studiousness and a pretend put-togetherness and really change our heart. But we can do things to change the image of the heart. Right? We can do stuff to try and make ourselves more presentable. Right? To a larger group of people, and make yourself seem better. We can present a lot of things through our heart. But it doesn't, really change the content of the heart. And in the Bible it says that only God truly knows a man's heart. And I think that, we know a lot about our heart, but even people to an extent, I think that people are so good at deceiving themselves that we might deal with an issue of pride, but then we might call it something else because we really don't want to call it pride. And then we call it something else for long enough that we forget that it was even a problem to begin with. And now we're dealing with trying to fight lust when we're really dealing with pride in the first place.
Come on.
Because when we say it to ourselves long enough, it's proven. If you tell yourself a lie long enough, you'll start to believe it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are even so good at subconsciously putting down what's really in their heart. Trying to run away from what's really there. That now we're in a standpoint where you can know a lot about your heart, but I think even God only knows the true depths of your heart. Right? But God also sees what we do, and so that means that there's a difference between the heart that God sees and the heart that people see. There's a discrepancy, there's distance, there's a gap between what God sees and what people see. And what I've really figured out about that gap is our intention. Intention is the gap between the true position and a presented image. That's what intention is. Because when we intend something, we intend to present ourselves or our life or our experiences in a way that they might or might not actually be the real position of what the thing is that we're dealing with or that we've gone through. And so we present this image that is idealistic, but it's our intention that creates that. And so there is a level that is God sees what's truly there. The next level is people see what is presented, but then we see the intention. Right? And I'm not trying to say that like God doesn't see our intention, but like it's created by us. Like God doesn't create an intention for us. Right? Like he wants us to be honest with ourselves. He wants us to be whole to ourselves and be real with ourselves. But the intention that we have is created by us. Right? So God sees the true position, people see the presented image, and we create the intention. And so, you know, you're thinking like, oh, yeah, because that was really my main struggle in high school. I'm still trying to figure out and work through the ways that I presented myself as, really for me, it was somebody who had to have their life together. I've always thought of myself and wanted to think of myself as somebody who has the answer before you ask the question. I've always been very attent and really worried about being able to respond very quickly because I want to appear to be a very self-reflective person. And so I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I've done a lot since high school to really become self-reflective, where before it was very like unauthentic and I would give very surface level answers and try to present myself as deeper and more put together than I was. And what God was showing me about that is that I was limiting myself as to what could actually get done, about what God could actually do through me. And so there's this challenge that we have to face about giving ourselves in our heart to God. And when we give it to God, right, when we give our heart to God, we give our intention to God as well. We can't give our heart to God and hold on to our intention. Because if we give our heart to God, and we truly give it, and we wholly give it to Him, then we are left in a space where if we continue to present some other image than what's actually there, we're just taking away from God's purpose. We're just taking away from the plan that God has for us, because now we're saying, you can have this, but like I still want to touch it. I still want to control it. I still want to feel it. Because I know that what's really there, and like I know that at some point you're going to use it, but like I really don't want to talk about it. I really don't want to talk about what I'm going through. Yeah. And so I'm just gonna just a little bit. We're gonna take just a little bit of my heart back, and that's okay. But we have to realize that we lose God's purpose by doing that. And so, you know, you might be asking yourself, but Mitch, how do I get over it? How do I go? It's by vulnerability. Vulnerability is the only way to fight intention. And I'm an e-group leader. I meet on Monday nights at 7. And yeah, shout out Billy. Shout out Natalie. But I've had some people come to me before and they'll be like, Mitch, you know, what's your secret? What's your advice? What do you want me to do as an e-group leader? You know, like I'm starting out, like what words of advice do you have for me? And every single time, you know, I might change some other stuff about my answer, depending on the person, depending on what I know they're strong at and what I know they're weak at and what to address. But one thing that is always consistent is they need to be vulnerable at a deeper level than they're expecting their group to be in. I, as a leader, have to be willing to go deeper in myself than I'm wanting anybody in my group to go. And so if I want my group to go deeper, that means that I have to go deeper in myself. Because there's a depth that I can go to, and that shows, okay, you know, their leader is being vulnerable, and that means that, like, oh, okay, now I can talk about something. Now I can share what's really going on. But it's not going to happen unless if the leader does it first, right? I was in an e-group. It's one of my favorite stories, and I smile every single time he says it. But the first time that I went to, the first time that Tyler Blankenship met me was in e-group. And I was really starting to first deal with this problem of a lack of vulnerability. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to fully embrace myself, and I'm fully going to embrace what's going on. And so at E-Group that night, I was just like, hey guys, I'm dealing with lust and pornography. And Tyler, little did I know it, was also dealing through issues of lust. And so by me being vulnerable at a level of deep self-reflection and deep willingness, he was able to admit that for the first time, right? And so just to see that example of vulnerability through myself put out into somebody else, it gives me a little bit more comfort when I'm worried about being vulnerable, right? Your vulnerability now, I don't know, maybe when you're vulnerable, you're not going to have that person go on and lead an E-group and then reaffirm it to you like every single month, right? But it's going to be there. And whether or not you can see the effects of your vulnerability, they matter. But vulnerability is the only way to attack intention, because when we don't attack it with vulnerability, we lose power. We lose power. We lose God's power. We lose the power of the situation. We lose the power of that situation, the circumstance. We lose the power that's happening. We lose the power. And I was really nerdy with this one. I busted out my big giant concordance, right? Which, if you guys don't know what a concordance is, it's pretty much like a list of every single word that's in the Bible, and it has all of the Greek and all of the Hebrew words. And so the word for heart that's in this verse, right? The Greek definition could literally be written as the seed of thought. The heart is literally, in the Greek, the seed of thought. And so I started thinking about that, because I was just like, that's such a weird definition. Like, why would they choose to use that word to describe our heart? And I think that what they were trying to do, because in this passage, the word reflect establishes a pattern, right? The water reflects a face, and the heart reflects a man. It's a pattern. Because the word reflect, what happens is whatever the heart or the water is, it fully reflects and acts as a mirror to what is put towards it. It's a pattern every time. You know, if I walk up to somebody and I were able to look at their heart, I would be able to see the person. Every time. It's a pattern. It's a math equation, right? If I put somebody's face in front of water, I know that every single time it's going to show me their face. And so when I realized that reflect established a pattern, and that heart is the seed of thought, I realized, wait, that means that the thought that is sown is the action that is shown.
That's good.
The thought that is sown is the action that is shown. But it's all from a position of power, right? We have the ability in ourselves, in the patterns that we have created, in the position that our heart truly is, we have the power to do something about it. But when we take ourselves away from that pattern, we take ourselves away from God's power, then we lose the ability to reach people. And so what was really important about that connection, right? The thought that is sown is the action that is shown. You know, it's just a little rhymey, cute thing, right? But it's really important, because what you fill your heart with is what's eventually going to come out. And now this is, when I said earlier that the heart is a hollow organ and that was really important, this is why it's really important, right? The heart itself, when you think about the anatomy of our body, you know, like arteries carry stuff away from your body. If you're in kinesiology or anatomy or whatever, you'll remember like artery away, away, right? It carries stuff away from your body, and it carries stuff to your body. However, the heart itself doesn't make any of the nutrients. It doesn't create the oxygen. It doesn't create the food and the nitrogen and I don't know what else goes to the body, but it doesn't make any of it. It's hollow. All it does is pump. All it does is beat. And so whatever you put into the heart is whatever's going to come out of it. It has no control. It's not like if we just keep putting the same stuff into our heart and into our minds and into our lives, then how do we expect anything different? Because all it is a pump. And so, if we don't do anything about it, then nothing's going to change. It was even Einstein, right? Well, attributed to Einstein. People don't know if it's actually Einstein. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I want to become a better person, but I keep doing the same things that got me to where I am to begin with. It's insanity. It's insanity. But the power of the decision is all in your hands. We have to realize that if we want to change, if we want to change the pattern, we have to change the input. Right? We can't expect something different from the same old thing. I've been marching to the beat of my drum for so long. I've been drumming the same beat over and over and over, and I've learned how to walk to it, and I've learned my little dance moves, and it's nice, and it's groovy, and I'm enjoying it, and like, yeah, I know I get a little off step every once in a while, but it's still nice and fun. I still love going out partying, I still love going out drinking every once in a while. You know, it's not a problem, it just happens every once in a while, but yeah, I know. And I make bad decisions when I'm there, and I know, but it's not that bad. And like, you know, I only get off beat a little bit. You know, I only switch from 4/4 to 6/8, just a little bit. You know, not a whole bunch. You know, sometimes it can even be dancing and fun. No, if you want to change the pattern, you have to change the input. And if we don't change the input, then we lose the power. So I just want to close this in a time of prayer, and I want to pray specifically that you guys will start focusing on your heart, because it's so much more important than really what people give it credit for. The condition of our heart and the way that we focus and the way that we live is so focused around trying to present something that isn't there all the time. And we have to be willing to hand it to God, to be vulnerable. Because the smaller the gap is between the image that we present and the position that it truly is, the smaller the gap, the more authentic the purpose. So God, we just come to you now. God, we know that there are holes in our heart that we continue to fill with things that we make it whole for a little bit. We make it full for a little bit, but ultimately it runs out. And we're left with the same holes, trying to fill it in the same way. And when that gets old, we switch to something else, but it's still fixing the same problem. And God, that can only be filled by you. God, I just ask that you come into our hearts right now in a way that we've never been able to admit it before, to a level of vulnerability that we aren't even comfortable with because we aren't able to fully understand how vulnerable we'll have to be. God, push our levels of comfort and allow us to rely on you in a brand new way. In your holy name we pray.